everyone, how's it going? In case you're just joining us, hi, my name is Atousa, I'm a third-year medical student and I'm making a video every day in the month of November. So today's topic was actually inspired by a question that I got, and if you watched one of my previous videos talking about how to deal with stress, that video was the result of a question that I got from you guys asking, how do you deal with stress? And after I made that video, I got a follow-up question by the same person asking, and I'm going to read the exact question out. What if we are doing a stressful job which is not a joy for us, but it's necessary for living? Now this is a really good question because I think most, if not all of us, will find ourselves in this situation at some point in our lives. Now obviously the question itself is a complex one and there isn't necessarily a right or wrong way to answer it. But I thought, for the purpose of answering this question, we would open up a little bit of dialogue. I can maybe share with you some of the things I've learned and some of my experiences. And I would really encourage you guys to share your experiences and your thoughts on the matter in the comments, and maybe we can start a discussion about it. So I guess to begin with, let me share with you a couple of things that came to my mind immediately when I read this question, and I guess then we can go a little bit deeper into each of those. The first thing that went through my head when I read this question was the fact that you said necessary for living. And I think this is important because on YouTube, on Instagram, just generally all over the internet, I'm noticing a lot of patterns of people encouraging others to quit their job that they don't like, go for their dreams, take chances. And I am such an advocate of that. But I do think that without having an adequate safety net, without having some practical necessities covered, it's very difficult for people to take those risks and to just leave a job that they find stressful. Because ultimately, we do have to feel safe. And sometimes a job that we may not necessarily like is the thing that is giving us security and giving us safety. And while I am generally a big advocate of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, you have to be the judge of whether you think you are ready to be taken out of your comfort zone, or whether you think just quitting a job and then trying to figure it out afterwards is going to cause you more harm than good. Now, on the complete other end of the spectrum, I can give you the counter argument. Certain people need to be very comfortable, and sometimes that doesn't happen. What I mean by that is that there may be somewhat of a safety net, but there are some people who may feel inhibited to take risks unless they are certain that things will work out. And obviously, in a lot of cases, things can't be certain. Sometimes you do have to take a leap of faith, and the whole point of a risk is that there is no certain outcome. And if you're the kind of person who keeps waiting and wishing something would change and wishing something in your job would change, then you may not take the necessary actions. I guess on this end of the spectrum is the school of thought that you should take a leap and learn to fly on the way down. Generally, that's the approach that I take in my life, and sometimes it has given me great benefits. Other times it has meant that I have completely hit the ground. And I don't think there is necessarily a right or wrong way. I think it depends a bit on your personality. Something that I believe can be an asset in my life but can also be a detriment is my impatience and my sense of urgency with everything that I do. And you may find yourself in a similar situation too. You may feel stressed and you may think, that's it, I'm feeling impatient, I just want to leave, even though I've been in this job for like 12 weeks, and although I'm not fully settled, I don't think it's for me and I'm stressed and I just want to go. That might be the right decision for you. And there have been times where that has been the right decision for me. But a personal challenge that I have to face, and perhaps if you fall into this category, you may have to face it too, is to balance what is a calculated risk versus just being reckless. I have certainly taken reckless decisions in the past. And I think an important point to mention here is that you yourself need to be the judge of what you class as something that is a reckless decision versus a calculated decision or a calculated risk. Just to give you an example from my life, I finished my master's degree after studying at King's in London. And after finishing, I was hoping to stay in London and get a job in a lab as a researcher, just to follow on the things that I was learning as part of my master's. Now, at the time that I finished my master's, I didn't have a job lined up. And I had maybe about a week or so left in my student accommodation before I had to make the decision of signing a lease or signing a contract for a flat in London. Now, as you guys may know, renting prices in London are not cheap. And I was faced with the decision of, okay, so I've just finished my master's. Do I go home to my parents' house and wait to try and find a job, to get interviews, to get something secured before coming back down to London and then signing a contract for a flat? Or do I take the risk, sign a contract, find a place, and just keep my fingers crossed that something shows up? Now, as I said, because I tend to steer more towards the take a leap and learn how to fly on the way down kind of person, I decided to go for the latter. I found a flat with a friend of mine, we signed the contract, we paid the deposits, we paid the first months of rent, and I still did not have a job at this point. And I remember it vividly at the time because I think my parents were really worried of, oh my goodness, like what is she going to do? Like what if she doesn't find a job? Like what's going to happen? But in my mind, I had a sense of calm because to me, that wasn't reckless. To me, that was a calculated risk. And there were two reasons for that. Firstly, I had managed to save up enough money to at least be able to support myself for a short while, giving me a bit of a buffer time to find a job. And also, I remember before making this decision, and I don't think this is something I necessarily communicated to my parents, but before making this decision, I had said to myself that, you know what, if I have to work in a cafe, if I have to work in a bar, if I have to do something like that, while I wait for my dream job, for my researcher job to show up, I'm happy to do that. That's okay. And because I had accepted that and that I was happy to go ahead and take that route should I need to, it didn't feel like a reckless decision to me. And I hope that you guys can use that example and apply it in your own life. I understand that sometimes from the outside people can tell you, don't do this, like why are you quitting your job, why are you doing this, or you should be happy, etc, etc. If you feel like you want to make a decision and if you feel like you have adequately carried out a risk assessment, if you like, then trust yourself. And if you feel like it's the right decision for you, then trust yourself in taking those actions. And luckily I did manage to find a job in time, and it was my absolute dream first job to have, and I was really grateful for it. And looking back at it now, I'm so grateful that I did take that risk. I guess to link this a little bit more directly to your question of should you leave a job that is stressful but that is necessary for living, my question to you would be this: would you be willing to do something in the interim, a job that may be even less preferential than the one you have now, in the hopes of working towards applying for something different or something better? That's a question that only you can answer, and it may be worth thinking about. Now, the next thing I want to share with you is a lesson that I learned from a good friend of mine. As I said, sometimes I have this urgency to act and I can feel quite impatient when things aren't going exactly the way that I would like them to go. However, I learned something really important from this friend who was in a job that he didn't particularly enjoy. He went through a period which I'm sure he would describe as being incredibly stressful. I'm not going to go into the specifics of the job or why it was stressful, but it was stressful and it was a difficult period. And this wasn't going on for a short amount of time, so it wasn't a matter of days or a matter of weeks, but it was bordering on a matter of months. And I remember speaking to this friend and kind of challenging some of his thoughts and thinking, well, you know, you seem to be stressed and you seem quite unhappy in the role that you're in now. Have you thought about changing? And although I could see that a part of him wanted to do that, maybe it was a personality difference, maybe it was preferential, maybe there were reasons that I wasn't aware of, but I could tell that he was feeling a bit more risk averse and he wasn't particularly ready at the time to take the leap and take the action and change this job role. Maybe he felt that it was necessary for him. Maybe he had certain other concerns that I wasn't aware of. But either way, I remember him delaying this and continuing to be stressed and unhappy for quite a while. But then this is the part that surprised me. After a while, he found ways to make the job itself less stressful. He started having relationships with people in a different way. He started interacting with his colleagues in a different way. He started taking on different challenges at work. He started putting up boundaries and saying, no, I can't do this. And in his job role, this was an option. And I understand that in certain places this may not be an option, so I do empathize with that. But just the fact that he started making changes himself, he started to see different results. And I kid you not, within the next, I want to say 2 or 3 months, not only was he feeling so much more at ease and passionate and excited about his job again, but he got a promotion and he started working on projects that he really loved, and he started working with people who he collaborated with better. And this was a true shock to me because in my head I was like, okay, if you don't like something, take the action and make a change. But it was kind of baffling for me to watch him go through this phase and evolve through it, almost like going through the troughs and coming out the other side equally as well. Now, the outcome was the same. For example, you can quit your job and get a new one and end up here, or you could kind of go through the phase and then end up here. And I think this is something that is very dependent on your situation. But it's worth thinking about and asking yourself a couple of these questions. Is there anything you can do that you can take responsibility for in your job in order to make it less stressful? Can you speak to your managers to try and make changes that way? Can you take responsibility yourself and try and figure out what things are stressing you out and if you can directly do something about them? Equally, and I think this is an important thing that we don't always talk about, is that can you just accept that having a certain amount of stress may be part of the journey? Maybe very much like my friend, the fact that you're going through a trough right now or going through a dip, nothing has gone wrong. Maybe that's just part of the journey in order to end up here in a place where you are happy and that you aren't stressed. Could you perhaps accept that this may just be a phase? And I also say this from a personal experience point of view, that I think there have been times when I have quit too early and I may not have stayed long enough to reap the fruits because I wanted so badly to avoid the dip right here. And it's so easy for me to say this in hindsight now, but if you're in that situation now, I wonder if you could think about it as just part of the journey instead of thinking, I'm stressed, therefore something is wrong. Finally, if you really think that this job isn't for you and that you would want to leave, but there is a time period where you just have to wait it out because, as you said, it may be necessary for living. Are there things that you can try and get out of it in the time being? What I mean is, can you start paying more attention to the things that are going well and the things that you are learning? I'm a big advocate when I speak about these topics on my channel that sometimes we have to experience what we don't want in order to learn what we do want. So perhaps you going through a stressful job or a stressful period is not a bad thing because it's just teaching you what you actually want. And once you figure out what you actually want, then you can start moving towards it. But on a more practical level, you can say, I don't like this job as a whole, but there are this, and this aspects that are teaching me something and that I do find valuable. And very finally, this kind of encapsulates everything. It's worth asking yourself the question, and the answer may be yes, or the answer may be no. But it's worth asking yourself the question that if you take the focus off yourself and your own stress for at least a time period and instead think about the people you are serving at your job, the projects that you are contributing to, the overall outcome that you're hoping to achieve because maybe somewhere down the line it's going to have an impact on other people. I wonder if it may help you to take the focus of yourself and your experience and instead put it on what you can give to others and how you can serve others. And I know one way of thinking about this is that perhaps our own needs need to be met before we can give. But maybe it's the other way around too. Perhaps by giving, our own needs will be met as well. But there you have it. I think those are my thoughts on this topic. I hope I have at least created some topics of discussion, and as I said, I would really love to hear your experiences and your thoughts on the matter. So if you would like to share anything, put it in the comments below. But until then, I'm going to leave it there and I will see you tomorrow.